Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, where I have with me professional wrestler Derek Neal. So, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Bubba. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I am very excited because you've been killing it in the last few years. And obviously, I've been, we're only going to be talking about a few promotions. And one of the promotions I kind of want to talk about, and this was before they changed over, is NWA and
Okay.
NWA New South, because you did a bunch of stuff in NWA. So how did you even get into NWA? Because it was very well recognized all over the world. It
Oh
still
wow.
is.
I first started. I guess I kind of started in the affiliate system. I want to say, when that was going on before, Billy Corgan disbanded that. It was probably around 2009 for a promoter named Mike Porter. He promoted NWA Main Event out of the Nashville area. Um, that's where I got my first start at with the NWA, and then eventually is NWA Main Event, and then I would eventually go to NWA Top Rope for Mike Searcy, and I would wrestle there. I think I got the junior heavyweight championship there a couple of times. The NWA Southern Tag Team titles for NWA Top Rope twice, and I was a Tennessee heavyweight champion twice, and it was through that that I eventually got a shot at the World's Junior Heavyweight Championship in 2012.
Yeah, and then to even jump off of that, because eventually you come into NWA South and you're getting title shots against Mr. USA, and you also have the Bluegrass Championship at the same time, and then you
Yeah,
unified both of those titles. So, what was that like? Because here you are building a lot of steam, and you have one title, and then you're unifying it, and you're legitimizing both titles during that match.
yeah, that was really awesome. As far as with USA, that's where I got my second shot at the World Junior Heavyweight Championship. Was with him, but it was really neat because the Bluegrass title was a fairly new championship, but to be able to win the unification match with the NWA Southern Heavyweight title, that was a pretty cool feeling. Just because with the Southern Heavyweight Championship, there is a little bit of history with that championship, and to be on the list with the guys that are on there, like a Steve Corino, or if you go even further back, I think it may have been the Memphis version, but but some of the wrestling sites are, putting the lineage of that version of the belt into the one that I held. Even Sputnik Monroe, out of Memphis, who was a legend in Memphis wrestling and also a legend in civil rights. To be on the same list with guys like that, that was a big deal to me.
Yeah, and to even talk about that, because it is important when championships have legacy and that they have history attached to them and that they weren't just invented yesterday. And to be a part of that and have that and then to be included in that and to be trusted, what is that like for you that you were trusted and that you were the face of this company? When people think of NWA South for a while, you were their guy, you were their champion.
For me, like it's a big deal to be in that lineage, and to be in the history books, I guess, so to speak. I know that the history's kind of changed with the NWA ever since Billy took things over, but but even through all that, I mean that's being on the list of champions with the wrestlers that held that belt. I mean that's something that can never be taken away from me, and that's the big thing for me.
And then as champion, one of the cool things that happened is that you got to face a former partner, which is Eric Andrews. And you guys were
Yeah.
simply perfection. And obviously there's a long history with that. There's some good blood and bad blood mixed in. And obviously there was a championship match. So what was that like, having that being thrown into there? I think you also had some tag team matches against him as well that sort of built into this a little bit. And what was that like, getting to face your former partner and sort of, I guess, settle the feud? And it went a very interesting route.
Yeah, that was a very interesting time for me. You know, off and on, even before Eric and I began to team up. We did wrestle each other a lot in the Nashville area for USWO wrestling, which was ran by Tony Falk. So there's always been history, whether we're on the same side of the apron or not. But Eric is somebody I've known my entire career of 18 years of now of doing this. So um, I wouldn't have it any other way as far as stepping into the ring with a guy like that I've known my entire career, somebody who was my best friend, somebody I trusted more than most people in professional wrestling, and to go out there and just leave it all laying in the ring, every night that we ever locked up or tagged together, it was always a good time for me.
And now, obviously, there's a bunch more matches we could talk about with NWA, but I think that doesn't compare to your run in IW Mid South, where
Oh,
I
we're going to
think
talk about
you.
Mitch Page.
And
Ooh.
so obviously you had wars with Mitch Page. The two of you beat the shit out of each other all over Mid South. And so let's talk about the two of you guys going at it, because this is not a single match. This is not tag team matches. These were wars.
Yes, absolutely. That's the thing about me and Mitch. I mean, there was a lot of story between us, but you can bet your ass, when that bell rang, we was going to go toe to toe till there was one man left standing, and it was like that every time we ever fought each other. Um, and that was the first time I ever really got to know Mitch. And after that feud was over, I mean, Mitch Page is somebody I truly love and respect, and he had a great mind for professional wrestling. I mean, very smart. Um, as far as in the business sense of matches and how they work and the who's and the what's and the whys. I mean, Mitch was very, very smart at that. Almost sometimes at times genius. But he is by far one of the toughest sons of bitches I've ever been in the ring with, bar none. I mean, he the thing I loved about my whole feud with Mitch Page was he brought out another side of me. He showed another dimension of me to wrestling fans. That I could. There was other avenues I could take and other things I could do. Other than just a traditional pro wrestling match.
And so what is that like? Because sometimes we all need evolution. People force evolution. As a podcaster, there's about 4 or 5 people who, in the last 7 years, have forced me to evolve in a lot of ways. And I would imagine in wrestling that is extremely similar. And so what is that like when that happens for you? And also what is it like to face somebody over and over again? Because that also forces you to become better, try new things, try to outsmart them, and also you have to make it interesting again so that people don't get bored and that people say, oh snap, he did something unexpected.
It's very eye opening experience. It definitely keeps you on your toes. Especially when you're intertwined with somebody in the ring that's not that clashes with your typical wrestling style, or the way that you try to control the pace of a match. It really does keep you on your toes. That's what's so exciting about it, because it's not the same. I mean, Mitch was totally different from most opponents that I've had throughout my career, especially at that time period in my career. He was definitely like nobody else I've set foot in the ring with before, and it really made it interesting.
And then to even go further talking about different, we have to talk about your boss in Mid South, and that's Ian Rodden. And for those who don't know, Ian Rodden is old school ECW. He is not, traditional. He is not soft, for lack of a better word. And what was that like, getting to wrestle your boss and hit your boss and your promoter to some degree? And the fact that you have a promoter who is a wrestler and has no problem taking a beating and giving one out.
Honestly, that was a very fun time. That match, I really enjoyed that. You know, say what you want about Ian. I mean, everybody knows Ian's got a history, and but I've always gone off my own personal experiences with people, and Ian's always taught me with always treated me with class and respect 100%. And it was fun to go out there and go toe to toe with him. Because I mean that's somebody that I did see on the TVs when I was younger. So it was a good time for sure.
And you had a fun match. You had an Indian Strat match, I think, with him. And
Oh yeah. We beat each other pillar to post on that one.
so what is that like to get to do those types of matches, though? Because they are few and far in between. They mean something. And obviously, you're now at this point starting to gain a lot of steam. He's the old veteran that a lot of people know from ECW, and everybody knows that he's hardcore and that he can go and he's extreme. And now you're having, I wouldn't say an extreme match, you're having an intense match. It's a fight. There's like actual weapons, if for lack of a better word, in the ring, and it means something, as I stated before. So what was that like for you?
Well, I really like the idea of the Indian Strat match. I know Ian, might be a little bit unconventional sometimes in his thinking of matches, but I mean, right down to the bone, Ian has always loved old school wrestling, and I felt, and and I have talked with Ian about old school wrestling in the territories a lot, 'cause I mean, even himself, he caught the tail end of that in his career, and as far as like, global wrestling and Memphis and all that, he was there for that. Even before ECW, I believe, if my memory serves me correct. So, it was really cool. It kind of gave me like almost like a Crockett vibe, like with us going out there and going toe to toe in the Indian Strat match. It definitely had that old school big fight feel between him and myself. And I felt that we went out there, we gave each other all we had.
Yeah, and that's kind of, I rewatched that match and I found that match, and one of the things that I got out of that match that I feel wrestling is lacking is a big fight type match feeling. We see it where everything doesn't have to be a big fight feeling, but you need to almost have like a main event on every show, that there's like a war and that there's some history and there's some story and that these two people are going at it for a reason. And I feel wrestling is lacking, and I felt like this match had that going for it. And it's nice when you see that. And I think it's super important when that happens. And it's something that wrestling is lacking when it's done right. And when shows do that amazingly, it actually means something.
Right, because I mean, especially you want to try to have some kind of story. I mean, in your matches, and me and Ian had that. I mean, like honestly, I think for the most part, if you don't have some kind of story, I mean, the fans aren't going to get emotionally invested, to really care about what you're doing in there. So,
And I would imagine, especially now when I'm watching on IWTV, and legitly I have so many options, and I'm guilty of this too, that I'll be watching a show and I'm not interested in a match, and I just won't tweet out about it. But then I'm interested in another match 15 minutes later, and I'm starting to tweet again at it. And I'm sure that there's statistics on this. And so if you don't catch my opinion, I can go watch anything else on Netflix rather than a wrestling show for 15 minutes and then come back to it when something is piquing my interest again. And I think it's a real problem where there's a lot of competition out there beyond wrestling. And well, you need that story in many ways.
yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I think a story is probably the most important building block of a match. And you got to have something to catch people's attention, especially now, because I mean, I've been told this a lot. I mean, we've, you've seen it on the news and all that. I mean, people's attention spans are shorter now than they've ever been. So you really got to find a way to try and hook people in. And, I think being able to start off a story, in a way that people can relate, that's what's going to grab people's attentions and keep them watching.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think one of the stories that also is in Mid South is the formation of Todd Morton Hangman. or the Hangman.
Yes.
And obviously this is Larry D, who is killing it, Stan Sierra, and I think the real story was you facing the Three Jacks, which is John Wade Murdoch, Nick Depp, and Reed Bentley. And
Yes.
so obviously John Wayne Murdoch is a monster. Reed Bentley is a scary motherfucker. And Nick Depp can be terrifying as well. And you guys had matches with each other up and down in a variety of ways. I think Mickey Muscles, Mitch Ryder was involved. Aaron Williams was involved. Congo Kong was involved in some of these matches. And so what was this like, having a variety of matches, single matches, tag team matches, 3 versus 3, other people coming in and out of these matches as, new tag partners and all that stuff, because obviously you're going toe to toe with some of the best deathmatch wrestlers in the world.
It was a very exciting time. I mean, it really was, because you didn't know, like, the thing I liked was, I mean, you knew you were in a feud, but you didn't know what you almost, like, some of the matches, like, week to week, like, you didn't know how they were going to go. And, I think things really, turned out so well, in that feud with the Three Jacks amongst us. I think we end up culminating that in, I want to say it was a 6-man dog collar. At the I want to say it was Thanksgiving night when we did that match, and that was pretty wild because that's never been done before. That's the first match in its history to ever occur. Daddy. And to be a part of that, that was a pretty big deal for me. And that was a lot of fun. It was different. It's something I've never done before. And when you get to do something like that, something that's so new and fresh, I mean, it's really riveting.
And even to talk about that, because when you're making history and you're doing crazy matches like that, and then you also do it on Thanksgiving night, it adds a whole new layer to it where it's like, okay, there's more specialty in there. I think it is something that I'm getting at. And I think it's awesome to do things like that. And I love wrestling. Like, I love wrestling in the middle of the Super Bowl. I think it means something. I think it's important. And even to go into new territory, because a lot of people now are copying a lot of these matches, I feel, in there. Deathmatch wrestling saved 2020. Hardcore matches saved 2020. And I feel that if you didn't do the matches like this match, those were the impetus and the starting and the moving of the gears in a lot of ways. And it took about 3 years for everybody to catch up. That's what people want to see. So, yeah.
I mean, like I said, I really enjoyed that match, and a lot of people don't realize, but like back in the territories, and especially in the 70s, 80s, hell, even the 90s. I mean, Thanksgiving and Christmas night was your biggest drawing nights of the year.
And then and even go further, because you got to do a few cooler matches as well, and a few awesome matches. You got to face Warhorse when he was the Warhorse. Before Warhorse, he was Jake Parnell. And you also got to go through Shane Mercer and John Wayne Murdoch in a singles match. And Shane Mercer is a monster, and that guy.
Absolutely. That dude is a freak of nature.
And obviously we spoke about John Wayne Murdoch, and obviously he was the Wrestler of the Year last year. And so what were those matches like? And I think one of them was for the IWA Mid-South Heavyweight title, or they might have been both for it. I'm not exactly sure, but even to step into the ring with those two men, I mean, obviously you can only get better after you step out of the ring.
Oh, absolutely. I'm trying to run the timeline back, but the match with sorry about the motorcycle there. The match with Jake Parnell, that was before he was Warhorse. I think he was kind of, still somewhat into the littlest Viking character, maybe starting to get
and
out
he
of
was
that.
finding himself in a lot of ways.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look at the star he become. I mean, look what he did, in 2020, even though there's a pandemic. I mean, in 2019, I mean, he's the longest reigning IWTV champion in its history. He's got the most title defenses in its history. He wrestled on national television. he's in a video game. He's in, I'm sure like there's a wrestling card game out. He's got his own card. I mean, for an independent wrestler, he has done an extreme amount of really cool things. And to be able to have that match with him even before he took off, I mean, that was a lot of fun. I felt that we had a very hard fought match between one another. It's very competitive. Um, and then as far as with Shane Mercer, if memory serves me correct, I think that might have been a match for the vacated IWA World Heavyweight Championship at the
Yeah.
time. In which I beat Mercer for that. Can we go get my and then, and then I believe the final was between me and John Wayne Murdoch, in which that was a losing effort on my part. But but that was really cool because John Wayne Murdoch and myself, we go back a long time, because before he was John Wayne Murdoch, he was Damian Payne, and he was out of the Tennessee area. So and even through Nashville and through Middle Tennessee, I mean, we feuded for years. So, to be able to wrestle him on a stage like IWA Mid South, and and to see where he's done with his career, I mean, it was it's really special.
Yeah, and obviously, I don't think your story between the two of you is far from over, and I hope it's not, because I think there are many, many more fights that can happen between the two of you, and I hope that they happen. But I do want to talk about United Pro Wrestling, because you got to do something very cool. You got to face Abyss, and you got to face Rob Conway. Obviously, Abyss, TNA, Impact Wrestling, Rob Conway, WWE, left WWE, killed it in OVW, and has been killing it on the indies. So what was that like, getting to face two guys who really helped to build – one of them helped to build a major company at the moment that I guess is sort of on, I guess, the third tier, and is a road agent in WWE, and also wrestling a former WWE star who reinvented himself. And obviously, you and Rob Conway had some fights that were pretty intense too.
Yes, we did. As far as Rob Conway, it was really, really awesome to have the series of matches I had with Rob. Rob was somebody I watched on TV too. I was already, I believe, by the time he was signed to WWE, I was already, in the professional wrestling business. But I still always kept up with the product, and Rob is a very smart, knowledgeable guy, and it was a lot of fun having those matches with him. And even at that time, he was, I believe, he was one half of the World Tag Team Champions with Jack Stane. I think during that time, is it not? No, it was not Jack Stane. It was Matt. They were the Iron Empire. It was not Jack Stane. It was somebody else. But
name slipping me too. So
yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's Matt Riviera. That's who it is. And one of those matches with Rob, they did have the World Tag Team titles at that time. But not only that, I mean, he's a former, NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And, to be able to go out there and go toe-to-toe with him, that was a really good feeling, especially knowing where he's been and what he's done. And the same with Abyss. That was a really good time. That is a large man in person. But to go out there and to be able to hang with him in the ring, that was a big deal to me too. My trainer, who brought me up in the professional wrestling business, the headliner Chris Michaels, he wrestled on a lot of shows with Abyss before he was even Abyss. And then my trainer was also there in early TNA also, and and for him to even to be there, for that match, that was pretty special to me too.
And to even talk about this, because sometimes there's two schools of thoughts where some people rest on their laurels and everything they've done. You're a former WWE superstar, and then that's what you're doing for the rest of your wrestling career when you leave WWE. And same thing with Impact, or even probably what's going to happen with AEW with some people. But then other people reinvent themselves and give back also to younger guys and guys who need that opportunity. Because if you have a match with Rob Conway, all of a sudden people pay attention. to you and people start buzzing about you, and then let's say you pin Abyss or you put up a well-fought match against Abyss or a well-fought war or several matches against Rob Conway, it actually helps somebody who is new and is starting to break into it or never got their shot. So how important is that to have big guys working with, guys who are more local or are more territorial so that they get attention and that the business sort of builds up new stars? Because
I
that's
think
the
I
issue.
think it's very important, and it's very very vital to professional wrestling. Because I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the independent wrestling scene is the grassroots of professional wrestling, even for the highest of the high
Right
levels.
now, it's exactly where it is. WWE,
More than ever,
AEW,
more
they
than
don't
ever,
build stars anymore. They don't build stars.
and it really, independent wrestling has always been, the grassroots. For pro wrestling, and for those guys to come back, to step back down on the lower level and to take the time and give back and help these local and regional talents, not only get a rub and get their name out there more, but I mean even in being able to teach lessons on how to become a professional wrestler, through an in-ring situation, or like if you want to kind of go behind the scenes a little bit with it, even like wrestling seminars, things like that. I mean, for guys to take that kind of time, it shows they really care about the future of professional wrestling, and they want to try and leave it better than what they found it.
Yeah, and I mean, I went to a seminar by Bryce Remsenberg, who's a ref in AEW. About 2 months
Yeah,
before he came over to AEW for non-wrestlers. So people like referees, people like commentary, ring announcing, managing, things like that nature,
right.
promoting.
You
Super
know,
important.
that's one thing that really gets forgot, I think, with wrestlers. They don't really, some of them don't really realize how important it is to have a good referee. A good referee can make a match really good or really bad, more than you would think.
A good referee, if you're in a state or a venue that doesn't allow blood, meaning that if you bleed, there could be fines, the match could be stopped, there could be beyond consequences that result in legal issues, and somebody gets busted open, a good referee can be the savior of a company being fined a bunch of money and not being
Absolutely.
fined. And it might seem, oh, the referee is doing something, or God forbid somebody gets concussed, how to handle all of that. I mean, I don't know how many people saw the Super 8, but there was a situation in the Super 8 where a very good professional wrestler legitimately
Where he
got
broke
hurt.
that? That's where he broke his ankle, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it
Yeah,
was, it was crazy. And if the referee, I'm sure the referee picked up on it quickly, and then they knew to start the 10 count immediately, and they probably did a fast 10 count because it was a bad situation. So obviously, understanding that, I mean, it's just I don't think referees and even people like commentary and ring announcing gets enough credit because they can make or break a match very
oh,
easily.
absolutely. I mean, like a ring. I mean, really, a ring announcer can make or break a show. You know, as far as their style of ring announcing. You know, commentary. They, especially to the viewers at home that may watch it on IWTV or whatever streaming platform there is, from pay per view to IWTV Fight, doesn't matter, Twitch. I mean, the commentators help convey that story to keep the people at home invested in what you're trying to sell them. As far as a professional wrestling event.
And let's talk about that because I think commentary has helped you tremendously in New South. I think in New South in so many ways, and I know I'm missing some stuff of your career,
Oh
and
no,
and,
you're fine.
and all I want to mention is that your matches with Gary J and Kurt Stallion were phenomenal. But
Thank you. Yeah, I
I am
don't. If you,
contractually obligated to say that about Gary J.
that is
Hey,
one
he's
tough
been
son
on
of a
four
bitch. I'm
times,
telling you,
you
he's tough
know.
as nail. That is a tough son of a bitch right there. Me and Gary have had some wars. The most recent one, if you go on IWTV, it's the Paradigm Pro UWFI Contender Series Season 2, Episode 1. Me and Gary J actually have a UWFI rules fight on that event. That was a hell of a
What
match.
is it like to step into UFAW rules? I think I got.
Oh yeah, the UWFI rules. It's honestly, it's something I've always been a big fan of, and I've always
So for those who don't know, what are those rules exactly? So they get an idea what we're talking about.
Well, usually with those rules, there is a point system. Fighters would start with 15 points. So like, let's say you get a knockdown, you strike your opponent, you knock them down. That's like a 3-point deduction. If the count gets administered. And then, a suplex is 1 point, a takedown is 1 point. If you get locked in a submission and you go for the rope and get a rope break, that's a point deduction. So you start with that point system. So it's either, knockout, tap out, or the first fighter who gets down to 0 points loses. That's essentially how it works.
And it changes the way you do wrestling.
Exactly. It does. It does a great deal. No closed fists. You got to keep open hands. Now I know that UWFI, Paradigm Pro, they kind of adjusted their rules a little bit where they do allow forearm strikes, elbows, to the head. Now I think with body shots you can do closed fists with those, but it's something I've always enjoyed watching. There's another wrestler. He's a wrestler kind of here in the Tennessee area. He's done some traveling. His name's Gary Valiant. He's got a brother named Billy Scott who actually competed in UWFI in Japan. And he also Billy Scott was trained by Billy Robinson, so that's about as legit as it gets. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that guy is as legit as can be. And that's just a style I've always appreciated and always loved watching. And and I've had a lot of fun doing it too.
It's very similar to like the Heritage Gateway Championship with St. Louis Anarchy, where it's very pure wrestling, and it's very similar to that concept. And those matches, and Jeremy Wyatt is right now their champion. I don't know if he lost the belt.
That dude is the man.
Oh, that guy is so good. He's so generous. He's a nice human being. In the middle of COVID, he and I think Fred Yehi, I want to say, did like a 60-man Ironman match for charity.
That's a hell of a lineup between them two.
And it was for charity, completely like donate whatever you want to donate type thing. I think they streamed it on Twitch. And oh my God, well, what a crazy match. And this is like 6 months when both of them weren't wrestling either. And it was amazing. It's an amazing match. And really cool concept. And that guy is the best kept secret in wrestling.
Wrestling. 100%. He is one of the best I may have ever seen. Like Jeremy Wyatt is damn good.
He was on this show. That's why I can talk about him too. So if you're a wrestler out there, this is the ad here, and you want me to talk about you, well, get on my show and we'll see what happens.
There's the plug, baby. There's the plug right there.
And so obviously I do want to talk about Nwa South though, because I think as we were speaking about commentary, I think Nwa South commentary team has made you in so many ways. And
100%.
Obviously, I want to talk about Donnie Primetime because the two of you have had fights. Obviously, he became something else, ripping off AEW. I don't know how he's getting away with being a bad boy there, but that's not the point here. So what was it like facing Donnie Primetime? Because Donnie Primetime, fantastic.
I'm gonna, I'm kind of leaning a little different on the character. I really dig what he's doing right now.
Oh, I love it.
I love it, man. Donnie Janela's fucking rocking it right now, dude.
I think it's funny.
He is on fire.
I think it's funny, okay? I think it's hilarious. Like, I don't even, like, Donnie Primetime, Donnie Janela. Obviously, we all know Donnie is a good wrestler. I think it's hilarious when he comes out and he's Donnie Janela, and we all know Joey Janela, and it's
Right.
just like, who in their right mind as a wrestling character would ever think to do it? It's like pulling an Orange Cassidy. That's how I view it. And I'm like, this is a brilliant concept.
Yeah, I mean, he's Joey Janela's cousin, baby. That's his deal. But no, I've had a hell of amount of wars with Donnie Janela. I mean, we were the very first main event on Action Clash, the very first one ever. He got one slipped up over me, and and the title changed hands. But I eventually ended up getting it back in that Strat match. It's kind of my specialty. I'm pretty damn good at them. I've had quite a few of them in my career. But that 30-minute Iron Man, that was really something.
Didn't you have a draw with him?
Yes, it did end up being a draw. He had me locked in the sharpshooter with seconds remaining. And I was not going to give that damn belt up. I mean, he'd have to shoot me with a damn gun. And I ended up passing out before I had to answer for a submission or being passed out.
And it's crazy. And this definitely helped to make you. And then complement this with the Heart of the South 16 tournament. And obviously, Jonathan Wolf, Baron Black, Mance Warner, three guys you had to tear through. Obviously, Mance Warner, as we know, is the Southern psychopath. So, what was that like being in those matches?
Insane. Completely insane. Baron Black is. I mean, he's doing some really good things for his career right now. He's been working with AEW for a year now, and I think Baron is a very solid in ring competitor. Very talented. He can talk. He can. There's really not anything I don't think he can't do. Now with Mance Warner, that's one I've been wanting for a long time. When I first met Mance, that's when he was just breaking in, for Ian Rodden, just a couple months in. And I mean, look what he become a megastar, we got to have a good, Bill Watts Mid-South, style brawl, and then in the final, it's Chris Crunk, AR Fox, and, Kurt Stallion, to win the tournament and beat those guys. And I mean, look where Kurt Stallion is now. Look what AR Fox has done with his career. I mean, it's insane. And Chris Crunk is. I think Chris Crunk is a very good talent that does not get the credit he deserves. I mean, he's a hell of a damn wrestler. I'd like to see him in more places.
And one of the things that I like about this tournament, and this tournament really gave you what I feel is that boost that you needed in New South.
Oh, it gave me the launching pad for sure, no doubt.
Because you earned that win. Because you had the toughest path in that tournament to go through Baron Black, to go through Mance Warner, and then to face AR Fox, Chris Crunk, and Kurt Stallion. It wasn't that you had an easy path into the Final Four match. You had a very difficult path. And to get there and then to win it with that difficult path and tearing through people who any one of them could have been in that Final Four match made that win probably much sweeter for you.
Oh, it did, and I hurt in places I didn't know I had for days after. It was that was a very grueling tournament, and by far it was probably I've been in quite a few tournaments in my career, but that was definitely the most grueling I've ever done.
And then following this match, you also faced Brian Pillman Jr. in another match. And what was that like? Because obviously Brian Pillman Jr. is killing it right now. He's got family in many ways. And then now you're facing somebody who's on a big stage as well, who's just breaking in too.
Yeah, that was a really cool moment, and and somewhat even surreal. I first met Brian right before he went to Lance's to train up there. there was an event in Cincinnati, Ohio, and it was Heartland Wrestling Association. It was kind of like a reunion event of sorts for HWA in Cincinnati, and I got booked to be on that event, and that's where I first met Brian. And Brian was kind of like he was a really awkward kid, when I first met him, and to see him down the road, 4 years or so later, and and tear the house down with him and have a really good match, and he was already on that launching pad and on the trajectory he is, to get where he is now. He already started that path, and to be able to see him then when he was first breaking in, and wrestling him to just last year. I mean, it was really damn cool.
And then this is where we get to the fun stuff with New South. Let's talk about that championship chasing, because you got to go up and a bunch of times against Cabana Man Dan, who reinvented himself in 2020, and he got a lot fitter. I think it's a safe assumption he added a boatload of muscle.
Yes.
Championship looks small on him now. So what was that like going after him and the two of you having your first initial feud? Because there's two feuds that we're going to talk about just recently, the last one in a little bit, but what was that like?
I've been familiar with who Cabana Man Dan is, even when I was younger in my career, and he was too. That first one, the Anniversary 5 event where I did win the New South Heavyweight Championship. A lot of people have told me that that match had such a big fight feel to it. It really did, and I really felt like we went out there and we put on a wrestling match. We did exactly that. I mean, it was straight up wrestling. There might have been a little bit of shenanigans there, towards the end of the match on my part, but it did get me the win to be New South Heavyweight Champion.
And then to even talk about this, because you got that championship and then you turned on the heel factor all the way up to 11.
Oh, absolutely, man. Only how that's the best version of me.
And then eventually what wound up happening is that now you got the orange jacket from that Heart 16 tournament, the Heart of the South 16 tournament. You start forming the Cortage with Adam Priest and Steve Michaels, and then you're facing people like Tyler Franks, Hunter Drake, Matthew Justice, Nolan Edwards, and you're just like slaying them all, tearing all of them throughout New South. I think Daniel Perez also was in there. And so what was this like, having this, this run where you're part of this group, you're legitimately knocking down every competitor and every top competitor? Because Nolan Edwards, Matthew Justice, those guys have been around forever, and then you're just beating them. And I'm not saying it's easy to beat those guys. And I'm sure there were fights, and it was pretty even matches, but even still getting the wins over them, what was that like for you?
Those matches, I have really enjoyed just about every one of those opponents that you named off. Guys like Tyler Franks or Hunter Drake or Daniel Perez, or there's even another younger guy that accepted an open challenge. His name's Duncan Mitchell. He's a product of the Nightmare Factory. I mean, to wrestle those young guys, that they really showed me what they had. I mean, they really did. I mean, and I even in some of those matches there were points of it where I got my up and comings. As far as them, nearly pulling out a victory on me or getting a barrage of offense on me to have control of the match. Those guys showed that they have the potential to have a very bright future in professional wrestling. I think they do. I mean, to be wrestling along with some of the biggest stars in the independent wrestling world, like Nolan Edward or a Matthew Justice, and to be able to go toe to toe with them, and to not only do that, but to gain a victory. I mean, not only does it raise my stock, but it raises the stock of the championship.
Yeah, and one of the things, and we're going to talk about your second feud with Cabana Man, is that I felt that you carried most of New South on your back in 2020. And I know some people are very humble about that. And I don't know if you're humble about that, but I think without you doing what you did for the better part of 2020, New South wouldn't have been where it is. And so, what was that like for you having these matches and really pushing hard and doing what you did because it actually made New South important. It added a lot of prestige. It made this championship mean something. You know, the championship is a big belt and it looks a little silly. And I felt on you, it meant something
Heaviest thing I've ever carried.
less silly in a lot of ways. And I
Uh,
mean that out of respect to the belt, but like, you know, it's a big belt and it looks a certain way. And then all of a sudden, oh, snap, you beat Nolan Edwards and Matthew Justice. And oh, wow, this is actually, you're making the belt relevant and you're actually carrying New South on you.
I have felt, I'm very grateful for my 2020. For one, like the pandemic. I mean, look how many wrestlers that it affected so many people negatively in the wrestling world just because there wasn't anything going on. And as crazy as it sounds, I mean, 2020 was probably my best year I've ever had in my career.
I know the feeling.
And I'm so thankful for that, especially seeing like some of the situations of other people. You know, I'm very lucky that I even had that kind of year in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. But
So,
I
so
felt
do you
not.
feel that it's luck, or do you feel that it was earned? Because I don't believe in luck. I believe in partial luck, but I believe a lot of things are earned. And so I believe in many ways with what you did, it was earned, and it wasn't so much. Maybe you were just in the right place at the right time, and that's what spiraled the entire thing.
Yeah, I've always been a firm believer that with pro wrestling, timing is everything. Um, and I mean, it's I would maybe not even pro wrestling, but like every facet in life, timing is everything. Being at the right place at the right time for good things to happen. At the time I won Hoss, I've already been a professional wrestler for 17 years. I've kind of been, I guess what you would consider more of a regional talent,
Yeah.
in the South and the Midwest. But I really felt that Haas was a big catapult for me, and and then winning the New South Heavyweight Championship, that only raised my stock further in the independent wrestling world. I started getting a little bit of national attention at that point, as far as amongst independent wrestling. And I felt that it was a win-win. I mean, I felt that New South, they gave me the ball to help elevate me, with that Hoss tournament, and and with me winning the heavyweight championship, like being a roster member, of New South, that they did help elevate me in that lot. And I think, by getting the ball and getting to take a run with it, I think I did help elevate the championship and, and did have a role in helping elevate the company. It was definitely a win-win. It was very mutual between, me and the company.
And then obviously New South sort of forked your path in many ways, where you have two things going on right now with New South. Obviously, WrestleMania, you and Cabana Man Dan sort of reignited your feud, and then that played out and it came full circle. And so, what was that like going from capturing the belt, defending the belt where he challenged you at an IWTV family reunion, which was a very cool event in and of itself, down in Mania Week, and then also he wound up recapturing the belt off of you, bringing it all full circle.
That was, man, like Tampa, like I was originally supposed to be in Tampa, and I was on some smaller, some other independent events that were not featured on, at that time it would have been the collective in 2020. But like I was scheduled to be on two events, and and then the pandemic happened and everything got canceled. And honestly, I didn't think the opportunity was going to come around again for me this year to to be able to perform, perform at, Mania Week on any event. And then, to get a chance to be on the IWTV showcase, it was very special for me, that I got the opportunity for that to come around again. I was very lucky, I thought, in my eyes. And to have the match that, that me and Dan had, it's something I'll never forget, bar none. I mean, we went out there and we gave it everything we had. We pushed each other to our limit, and we had a hell of a contest.
And obviously, then you redid the entire match, and then that went that way. And I love the fact that it's far from over. It has to be. There's just too much.
Yeah, I think Cabana Man, Dan, and myself, I think we're destined to do this shit forever.
When we all die, we all know there's a ring somewhere, either up there or down there, depending on what you believe. And we're all going to be watching it all together, drinking. So
be taking it on the loop in the afterlife.
Don't worry, Rob Gronkowski is the host of Hell, so it'll be fine. Don't worry, Tom Brady said go win another, so it's all right. And I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm not a New England fan. I'm not a Bucks fan. I'm a Giants fan saying that. So this is how I believe. Hey, we beat him twice, okay?
Hey, you did. You had his number 2 times. Even one time they had an undefeated season. So
it was 18 wins and 1 giant loss. So
that's right.
yeah, the fork in Nwa South for you also is the entire thing that's going on with you and Adam Priest, because that's far from over too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that ain't done.
All that, you coaching him and him, getting the jacket in the 2021 Nwa South Heart 16 tournament. I probably botched that name, but what was that? Like, you're coaching him, and then he gets it, and then you completely turn on him. And the amount of heat that you got from that was brilliant, and making him a baby face. Oh, brilliant. And you were champion at the time, too. So what was that like? Because that ignited a whole entire feud that has miles to play out with.
Oh, I agree with that. Me and Priest, that was somebody, I took under my wing to try and help and help elevate. And I mean, look at him and look at the things he's been doing, up until, him recently breaking his arm, and having surgery. But I mean, he's had a rocket strapped to his ass. And then for me, him winning the Hoss, it just kind of made me feel like he was just trying to get close to me, Felt a little betrayed.
And it wasn't even the fact that, like, you're putting on the jacket on him too. It was just so perfect because I wasn't expecting the heel turn. I don't think people were expecting it because it was like, oh, I thought he was just going to become like a further foot soldier protecting your title against Cabana Man Dan. And then at some point later on, there was going to be that heel turn. Either you were going to turn on him or he was going to turn on you. I thought it was going to go the other way around.
Yeah, nobody saw that coming, not even him.
But even still, because the amount of reaction, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Like, and this is what I mean by story, is that this story has me invested, because I knew at some point when that happened, it's like, okay, now this is going to be a blood feud. And I'm expecting this to go all the way for the title, all the way up the chain and the hunt, because what's going to hurt Derek the most is taking away your belt. And that's what I was expecting, that case. So
Yeah,
obviously, big fight field.
Yeah, it's nowhere near done between Priest and me. And we'll get to where I am right now at this current time with Nwa South, I'm sure, here shortly. But yeah, it's nowhere. I have not forgot about him. Believe that.
And what is next for you in New South? Because obviously we're there right now, and there's a lot of stuff going on with you in New South.
Well, have you watched Win City yet?
I am slightly behind, but we could ruin it for everybody else.
Well,
I
I'm sure you've
happy.
seen the pictures of Dan going around on social media, right?
I'm well aware of what's going on with him, and it's not flip flop approved.
Well, I still got my ace in my back pocket, for my rematch. I'm just waiting to play that card.
And so what is that like, knowing that you got a rematch coming, that you have the ability to strike at any point, and that you're just waiting for the opportunity, the moment, and that you're, being a viper. No RKO intended.
um, I actually feel like I somewhat have the power because I can catch him on a bad day and be three-time
And
New
what
South
is that
heavyweight
like to be on
champion.
the hunt again? Because when you're champion, everybody's coming for you.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
it must be nice to be like, oh, this is what it means to go hunting. This is what it means to be the predator. And I'm not saying that a champion, because you defend a championship. When you're the champion, you don't win the championship. You're not hunting for it. You're not acting. You're just fending off people from your belt. And now you're back on the hunt. And it must be nice to some degree to be on the chase.
I think being on the hunt's going to give me that killer instinct that I may have been missing that costed me the belt.
And so I'm very excited because obviously you got other things going on. Adam Priest right now is sidelined, but we know he's coming back, and he's going to be coming back hot as well. And I have a scenario in my head that I would love. I would love. I have this entire thing. You capture the belt. He's getting healthy again, and as soon as you capture it, he comes out and he challenges you for that. And then there you go. You got a major main event.
Well, we'll see what happens.
And so obviously that's what I would like, and I think a lot of people would like that. But in wrestling, we don't always get what we want.
That's
Just
true.
just ask Kurt Angle about Baron Corbin.
Oh yeah. Oof.
We all wanted one person to do it. We all wanted one person, and we can't have nice things in wrestling. So, and obviously there's a bunch of other people that you wrestled. You got to work with Effie, I think, a few times, and I love Effie and everything Effie's doing. Obviously, you got to be part of the Subverse action with Alex Kane, Logan Creed, and Manders. And Manders is another big guy.
Oh, absolutely. I hate that son of a bitch too.
I love Manders. I love Manders, even though he showed up
Uh,
an hour late for
but
my
no,
show.
getting on the subject of Effie for one moment, do not ever underestimate that man. I'm gonna tell you that now. Don't ever. That dude's truly amazing. I'm just putting that out there.
That is true. That I will attest to that, and
He
I'm
is
not
a tough son of a bitch, no doubt.
very, very, very tough. Your second grew tough. Second
Oh
gear grew
yeah,
tough.
second gear crew, baby.
So obviously there's a lot more wrestling we could talk about, but I do want to back out of all this stuff and actually just talk about wrestling as a whole. And obviously 2020 was a nightmare. I haven't been to a wrestling show since March of 2020, early
Oh
March.
wow, man,
Um, and
that's a long time.
I'm not planning to go to one for a while. Just because I'm going to let the dust settle before I come back so quickly.
I
Um,
can understand that for sure.
I also don't trust, and I'm also in Connecticut now. I used to live in D.C. I'm in Connecticut now, so I'm also unfamiliar with Connecticut wrestling, so that's part of the problem as well. I've been watching wrestling. Don't get me wrong, I love it. But and also I'm burned out from Mania Week. That thing just burned me out.
There was a lot of wrestling my week. It was a lot.
I need a vacation from it. I took after Mania, I took like 3 weeks off. I didn't watch any wrestling, didn't tweet about any wrestling, and I'm super busy right now. But how have you been affected because of COVID, and where do you think it's going because I think wrestling has to evolve. And both on shows that are being produced, safety precautions, the amount of people in there for a while, also the idea that maybe people have to go away from cash, and go to credit cards and things like that, and that entire thing. And just even how business is done in general, I think has to evolve, because we're in a pivotization, a moment in the world where we're going through a digital pivotization, and I'm part of that. And I've adjusted my business and my businesses that I'm a part of. So where do you think wrestling fits into that scheme?
I think that we could see, at least for the time being, definitely more produced type events, that would be pre-taped and, aired at a later date on whatever streaming platform, which, I have done quite a few of them, since this pandemic. I think to a degree, I think we will have to evolve a little bit. There is going to be a new normal. I don't think things are going to go totally back to the way they were. Um, I think it could get close, depending on the vaccinations and if people actually take them. I myself personally, I have been vaccinated. Um, but, I think that's, it just depends. It depends on people's personal choice if they want to do that or not. I wish they would, get vaccinated. I mean, not only does it protect yourself, but it protects other people too. I feel mostly yourself, but as a whole, it does protect others. But
Yeah.
I think we will see more, more produced type shows. Shows where promotions could be looking for sponsors or donors to donate to the boys and girls who compete.
And do you even feel that just even matches are going to change? Because obviously, I speak to a lot of people. I had somebody from Lingerie Fighting Championship on last Saturday, and that's a whole different ballgame of wrestling. And session wrestling is a whole different ballgame. And obviously, it hits a certain niche audience. But a lot of those people in that segment have done very well in COVID because they were already doing all this pre-tape stuff and also customization and also what you can do in something like that, and even something like a Limitless show, for instance, is very different than what you can do at a live show. There's a lot more flexibility. There's a lot more elements of storytelling that can be done and things like that, and pre-tape stuff versus live stuff. And so do you even think just that, even when we do go back to normal, there's still going to be stuff like that out there because, well, you can do more interesting stories when you have flexibility to do a cinematic match, for instance.
Yeah, I think through the pandemic, story has been very important. I mean, I've always thought, even with in front of a live crowd, I mean, I think it's the most essential part of a wrestling match to me. Is the story, and then the athletic aspect in the ring. But for me, like, yeah, I think through the pandemic and through the pre-taped events and empty arena events, I think you are able to convey a little bit more of a story. Wrestlers are more vocal in their matches now. If you've noticed, in the more of the closed set type of environment. But I will say, from a wrestler point of view, especially who has never, I've been wrestling in front of crowds for a long time. It's very, I mean, the close set thing, I do get energy off of it, but at the same time, it's very hard. You got to dig really deep on those type of events to bring that energy and bring that intensity, because you don't have those fans to feed off of.
And also, I would imagine that the audience now is Twitter, and even though, you might not, you can't check like what somebody's tweeting in the middle of your match, that is sort of the new feedback in many ways. When somebody's tweeting at you and if somebody's saying, oh, the heat on Derek is red hot. How did they do that to Adam Priest? What's going on? What the fuck just happened? I mean, that's the new feedback in many ways. And I don't
Yeah.
know how much you pay attention to social media, because social media can be good and bad. But also, when people are mad tweeting about a match, I mean, good or bad or indifferent, I mean, that's the new feedback when there's no fans there, because that's the only feedback you can get. And
Right.
so what is that like? Because I think that's also going to play a bigger part, even when we get back to fans. Social media is going to be a big feedback tool on how people feel. And even if somebody does 50 tweets in a match, and then the match after that, they only do 10, I mean, obviously that says something.
I agree, especially for where you're on events, like I said, it's like like a closed set environment, or even in the South, events I've wrestled on, there has been crowds, but there has been social distancing, there has been temperature checks at the door, they're forced to wear masks. In some of these places, I've even seen fans, get told bye bye for not wearing a mask. And even in those limited crowds, I'm going to tell you, in this pandemic, as a wrestler, the ones that have limited crowds, I know, some wrestlers have had gripes about wrestling in front of small crowds, but I'm through this pandemic. I mean, you would really learn to appreciate a small crowd. Honestly, just because you got somebody to feed off of. When you're out there, in between those ropes. But I think going back to the closed set environment, yeah, social media is going to be what's going to kind of catapult you or not. Because those are the people that are watching.
It's very interesting, social media, because I am in it, and I understand it, and it is super important at this point
Yes.
where
Yeah, it plays as far as for a wrestling fan point of view, like it definitely plays a very large role now in these times we're living in.
for me, I mean, my saving grace of this entire project is Facebook groups, Twitter, Instagram. I mean, they are just traffic drivers. A little bit of Facebook ads here and there. That's what drives traffic, and it's crazy how important it is. And I learned that the hard way all last year, building up, and I had a decent following, and I figured out how to grow it very efficiently in the last 16 months. So I am very well aware of how important it is, and it's not leaving anytime soon.
Yeah,
So
especially Twitter. That's a pretty big block as far as fan base for pro wrestling now. I would say it's even bigger than Facebook nowadays.
very much so, especially during shows.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah, shows, or even live streams, or just like a streaming, or just streaming an event. Like well, tonight's Tuesday, so 7 o'clock every Tuesday, New South Action Clash is on IWTV streaming. And I hop on my social media on Tuesday night, and I see a lot of hashtag Action Clash, you know, on social media, on Twitter. I don't really, and I've kind of compared it to Facebook, and I don't see near as much about it on Facebook in comparison to Twitter.
there's a lot more stuff like this on Facebook and on Twitch than on Twitter. I find that there's a lot of engagement saying, "Oh my God, he just did a suplex! Oh my God,
Right.
he just did a 450 leapfrog out of nowhere." Like, I see a lot of response to what's going on, and then I'm commenting, and it becomes very much a public square of people discussing and analyzing collectively, almost like a family, and we're all in the same room talking about it and watching it. And it's a very weird experience as a wrestling fan to do it. And on the indies, it's very interactive. In WWE and AEW, it is a hell of a lot less interactive.
Yeah, as far as with independent wrestlers, yeah, you're going to see a lot more, being interactive with the fans, I think, in that regard.
And I think that's many reasons why indie wrestlers are succeeding in a lot of ways. And some of them, and I'm going to use Warhorse, probably are making more money than people in NXT are, because indie fans are crazy, and when you interact with your fans, they actually buy your merch. What a
Yeah,
concept, right? What a concept.
it could be. I mean, you know, I don't know what Warhorse's bank account is, but I mean, I'd say he's doing well for himself. I mean, guys like him or like a Danhausen or an Effie, you know, those guys are making money.
Very much so, and it's crazy. And even people like any indie wrestler like a Shaza McKenzie, she is very interactive. And when you're interactive, your fans follow you. They buy your merch. It's just the way it works. And even when you're a bad guy and you're telling a fan to fuck off, and I've had wrestlers tell me to fuck off. And obviously, I know it's not personal. I would like to make that clear. But I'm like, great, now I actually respect you a little bit, and now I understand. And then I'll tell the wrestlers to tell me to fuck off, and tell them to go fuck off. And everybody knows it's not personal, that they're not blocking me, is my point.
Right, right.
It's part of stepping in. So obviously it's super important in that regard. And so obviously on that note, I do want to give you an opportunity to self-promote yourself. I think I put up your link to your pro wrestling tees. I think I put that up in the description.
Okay.
And if it's not, I'll put it later on, everybody. So obviously people should go buy your merch first and foremost. But where can people find you on social media? Twitter. I don't know if you have a Facebook page. I don't know if you have an Instagram or a website. Obviously, what is your pro wrestling tees shop and all that stuff?
As far as pro wrestling tees, I want to say it's prowrestlingtees.com/KingsRoadSlayer, I believe is the URL for that. I've only got one design up right now. I'm working on another one. You could also, follow me on Twitter at Derek Neal 91, or you could follow me on Instagram at Derek.Neal. Facebook, I don't have it, don't really have it public, so I'm kind of at my friends limit right now on that. So, and I haven't really, I mean, I do share professional wrestling related stuff on there, but as far as most of my content, it's going to be on Twitter.
And so obviously on that note, and what I've been saying to everybody is you have to support indie. That means you have to support indie wrestling. First and foremost, if there's an indie wrestler, what you need to do is you need to go. When they're on a show, you should buy a ticket to that show and see them. First and foremost, that's probably the easiest direct way, and you're supporting a lot of indie wrestlers when you do that. Secondly, you need to buy their merch, especially during COVID. So that means if they have a T-shirt, if they have an art print, they have bracelets, if they have a flag, I don't know what other merch, 8x10s, you have to buy their merch. But I will say this, and there's a caveat with that. COVID has been very tough on people. It's been very economically straining. It has been very economically draining. And if you're in a position where you are in a financial hardship, please don't go buy people's merch until you are financially able to do so. And what that means is pay your mortgage, pay your rent, make sure your electricity's staying on, your internet's staying on, water bills taken care of. If you have a wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, take care of them, make sure they are good. Also, if you have kids, make sure your kids are good too. If you have pets, make sure your pets are healthy. And make sure you have money for the next month too before you go and support anybody else beyond yourself. Please make sure you are okay, because that is extremely important. And while I think we are turning out of COVID and things are getting slowly better, I do think it is a long road out of recovery. And so please make sure you are financially okay. And if you are on that path to getting there and dealing with things and making sure you're okay, the best thing you can do, as I stated, is watch wrestling. You should be having an IWTV account. It's $100 a year. It is arguably the best value in wrestling right now.
100%.
And so
100%.
when you watch live shows, it helps the promotions, which ultimately helps the wrestlers. When you rewatch shows, it helps the promotion and the wrestlers. When you tweet at wrestlers, it helps the wrestler, the promotion, the company, and also it makes people feel really good. When people tweet at me and say, hey, you did a great job with this interview, I get warm and fuzzy inside, and I feel really good, and I feel appreciated. And I would imagine that when somebody says that was a hell of a match, I don't really like you as a heel, but you're a good wrestler, it makes you feel pretty good.
Oh, absolutely, 100% it does.
So you should be doing that, and you should be actively tweeting at people when they wrestle because it is important. It means something, and obviously it affects people and both positively, and also it does make people more money because if legitimately a million people tweet at a wrestler, every other promotion will book them. So that's all I have on that note, and I'm going to give you the final word before I let you go.
As far as supporting other wrestling, I know, like, especially independent wrestling, us in the South, we kind of get a bad rap sometimes. But man, there's some really great independent promotions in the South. Like promotions like New South Pro Wrestling or Action Wrestling, Southern Underground Pro. Um, support these companies. There's a lot of good wrestling in those companies. There's a hell of a amount of talent in these companies. Go out and try to find a show on IWTV. I promise you won't be disappointed, especially with the stuff New South is putting out right now. In Action, they're running a lot now. Now, Sup just taped a couple of events, and they premiered. I want to say they premiered in March and April, and I mean stellar. Events. I had out of that round of sub tapings, I had a hell of a fight with Effie and a hell of a fight with Dominic Guarini. But there's, it's not just me. I mean, those shows are loaded with talent. I'm glad to see, that's one thing I have noticed, that's kind of come good, I guess, from the pandemic. If you want to kind of shed a positive light, I think, Southern wrestling Southern-based independent wrestling has got a huge spotlight put on us, through all this, and and I think that we've been able to show the fans that we go out there and we give it all we got, and we're not going to grab a headlock for 12 minutes. That's. But seriously, go out and support them. And I mean, support any independent locally in your area. I mean, independent wrestling is the grassroots of professional wrestling. And you should support that if you really love professional wrestling.
Absolutely, and I couldn't have said it any better. Obviously, for those people out there, thank you for being on, for first and foremost. Obviously, I wanted to interview you. I love what you did in WrestleMania week, the matches with Bannerman Dan, going backwards and forwards with all these matches, obviously. And I think you're killing it right now. I think, you got your break in many ways. And I don't think I could have said it any better than you just did about supporting indie wrestling. It is super.
Well, I got a couple more that I want to call out too. There's another promotion that's really coming up. It's TWE in Chattanooga. They're also on IWTV. Check them out. I've had two hellacious brawls with Brett Eisen at TWE Chattanooga. So seek them out, find them. There's a lot of good young talent there. Or in Paradigm Pro Wrestling. I mean, we're kicking ass up there too in the Midwest. So check them out on IWTV.
Yeah, but both of those are phenomenal. And Uno number one, right?
Uno number one, Ichiban, right?
And that's what we're going to end on, and that's code for something else. And Big Bad Kaijus are fun too.
I'll strut.
And so we're going to end on those. Those are two codes. Anybody who's a wrestling fan should know both of those codes that I just dropped out there. And I'm going to leave it at that.